Welcome along to the European Yearling Sale Review, where we get the perspective from a buyer, which is Sean Grassick, bloodstock agent, and one of the leading vendors on the sale circuit, Ballyvolane Studs, John Foley, where they talk through a range of topics looking back towards the European Yearling sales. Delighted to be joined by John Foley and Sean Grassick as we look back on the European sales season. I think we'll start with Jesus Christ himself, who was busy turning water into wine all year, John Foley. I'm just going to read out some of the results you enjoyed, John. We've got a Havana Grey Coat, 85 into 400. A Homebred Acclamation, 470 grand you got for that one. A Glen Eagles, 28 into 280. And as well as that, at the Orby, you got a Calyx Coat, was 23 into 220. I mean, they're phenomenal touches, but it's fair to say the season didn't start off brilliant for a lot of pinhookers. I mean, it's really after taken by storm the last fortnight or so.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, I don't know about that. Look, Brian, we had a very good year. I obviously had a particularly nice bunch of horses this year, which, to be fair, all year long we thought they were okay. We didn't think they were exceptional by any means, but they just prepped really well, and they turned up at the sales, looking well. And on a personal level, it was very good. Like I had a lot of horses that vetted very well as well this year. That there's a lot of luck involved in that. I think we X-rayed 22 yearlings this year. I think 20 of them would have passed for Hong Kong. Like, I'll never get that again in my lifetime. So, when they vet good, it's a big help. And, we had some good pinhook results, which was great. But, I think the sales on a whole for everyone, was a mixed bag this year. What was good was very good, and then what was bad was terrible. So, some people did very well. But I think across the board, most people would say that it was okay, without being, very few people had, kind of a sales season which they describe as a home run. The good was very good, and the bad was desperate.
Okay. Did Tats take vendors by surprise? It seemed like it did. I don't think anybody would have forecast what was going to happen at Book 1 and Book 2 in particular.
Yeah, it did, to be sure. Like, I think if you take the sales season as a whole, Doncaster was fine, and I think there's kind of a niche customer that goes there. I can't say too much about it because I wasn't there myself, but I'd say it held its own. Somerville was a struggle for a lot of people. I think the second day definitely diluted the sale a little bit, and it made it hard work. Fairy House was fairly consistent. Goffs was pretty good. And then we got to Newmarket, and I think everyone was saying, hopefully it'll continue on to Goffs. And it just was unbelievable. And I think a lot of it is down to ammo coming in Book 1. And, they didn't buy any horse in Goffs, I don't think. And they were just uber competitive. And they definitely, they added another dimension to it, and they drove the whole thing. They made Godolphin work very hard for the lots they bought, and Sheikh Mohammed is a big competitor there. He doesn't like to get bet, and when you've two big operations like that, and they get stuck into each other, then you get a massive results, and that filters down to everyone. And I think that was kind of the main driver in Book 1, and that continued on to Book 2. And whatever way you look at the market as a whole, we're still very, very reliant on a couple of very big players. Take them out of it, and we'd all be in a spot of bother. So we have to be very grateful for the couple of big household names that are there and who are willing to spend a lot of money on horses in the hope of getting a good one. And without them, we'd be in a lot of trouble, I would think.
Yeah, I suppose the saying "a rising tide lifts all boats" kind of springs to mind because it kind of filtered down to Book 3. Sean, you were one of the busiest buyers at Book 3, and you bought, an array of different stallions. So for me, from the outside looking in, it looked as though I hate using the word the physical because it's not actually a proper term, but it was the physical or the physique that stood out throughout the sales. So, I mean, a good horse was still hard to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. We found that 100%. Any nice horse that we followed in, we saw there was plenty of opposition there for them. Even in book two, there was horses that we thought we might have a chance of getting because maybe the pedigrees are on the light side, but even there was a couple of nice horses we thought might make 50, made over 100 in book two. Then in book three, like we wouldn't be afraid to buy a horse by a stallion that's not the most popular or with a light pedigree. But we found even you needed nearly 30 grand to buy a nice physical in book three, or even more in some cases. It was very strong, and there was plenty of guys that you usually wouldn't see participating in book three there, still with orders to fill. So no, we found it very strong. And there was definitely this year, there was any nice horse, a good physical definitely made good money. But it's important for vendors and breeders to be rewarded for producing a nice horse, because it's not an easy thing to do. So it's important they get well rewarded in the sales ring.
Yeah. Not even at the top end, John, I thought it was brilliant to see so many horses making, or so many stallions, their progeny making 500,000 or more in the sales ring. You know, Acclamation had big results, Territories had big results. You know, it wasn't just your top level stallions. So I mean, I'd always associate you with producing a really good looking horse, no matter what the sire is. And I think that was reflective of some of the results you got this year. But would that maybe encourage a few more breeders to breed the racehorse going forward, given the variety of book 1 and 2 was so strong?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think definitely this year, just touching on what Sean was saying there, the really nice horse, in my opinion, got more attention this year than they did in other years. You know, I always find Newmarket in particular can be very pedigree orientated, and that will get you a long way. But I found this year, we had some really good horses that were a bit lighter on pedigree, and they made full whack. There was plenty of people for them, and I think the people this year, for whatever reason, appreciated the really, really good looking horse and the real athlete. Not more so than pedigree, but I think obviously the pedigree is very important, but I think definitely this year the good horse made all the difference. And I think from the point of view of it not being as polarized as some people would think, it still is very, there is a handful of stallions that are going to make a lot of money. But you look in book 2, I think this year, like you said, you had a Camico make $1 million, you had a Territory 750, St. Mark 600, Camelot and Acclamation made over 500. So like they are, not exactly household names yet. You've no Frankel, See the Stars and those lists. So there are a lot of good stallions out there, and if your mare warrants going to a better stallion, it's definitely, you'll get well paid if you can produce a nice individual.
And then Sean, I know you kind of, when you're buying colts, you prefer to kind of buy mile plus horses. I know you bought a Bangkok, which wouldn't have been on many people's list, for 27 grand. So did you find there was many horses a mile plus, many colts in particular on your list? I know you got a Massat as well, and I think the GBB bonus is something that you target. So how did you find shopping that sort of level?
Yeah, it is hard to get those staying horses at the price tag that we're looking for, around 40 grand or less. They're not there. Breeders aren't breeding them because I suppose there's not as many of those stallions around at that lower end. They tend to go down the jumping route. Case in point be Golden Horn, like very good stallion on the flat, loads of stakes horses, but he's gone more jumping now. But yeah, that's the reason we bought the Bangkok horse. Didn't know much about the stallion, must admit, beforehand, but he was a good race horse, and staying horse, there's plenty of options for them. Obviously you have to give them an extra year maybe, but there is a lot more options than for us in the resale market as form horses than say your sprinters. But there is definitely room for more stallions at that level for the staying horse, around the 15, 20 grand nominations. They're quite slim on the ground at the moment.
Okay. Just looking at the first season sires, is something we were just talking about before we came on the show, Sean, myself and yourself. I think it's a positive that no first season sire is running away with it. Maybe it might influence what people do at the full sales this year. I mean, John also said that it's becoming harder and harder to stand out from the crowd. So if I start with you, John, I mean, have you taken much notice of the first season sire championship this year?
Well, I have, like, obviously, like us all, I'm very keen, and you have to keep an eye on fashion and what's going well and what's not going well. Like, my view on the first season stars this year is that, none of them look exceptional, but none of them look that bad either. So, it's a 7 or 8 of them that are more than acceptable. You've had Kamikos had a Group 1 winner. Sergei Prokofiev started off very, very well. Looks to be a horse who get precocious horses. There are plenty of them that are doing fine without running away with it. But the difficulty, or not the difficulty, the thing with the first season stars, for a first season stallion to really make a mark like a Blue Point or Havana Grey when he did it, Maymas when he did it, is they have to be exceptional, because there's only a certain amount of 2-year-old races, and they are competing with Maymas, Wooden Basset, No Name Ever, Star Spangled Banner, all these stallions that get loads of 2-year-old winners and get good 2-year-old winners every year. So for a first season stallion to do like what Blue Point did last year, they have to be exceptional, and they don't come around that often. And when they are exceptional and they come around, they're very difficult for the likes of me or Sean or whoever to buy. When you go to a full sale or anything, or a yearling sale, when they do get to that level, that kind of elite level, they're very difficult for us to buy. So, in terms of this year's bunch, they look fairly solid. They don't look exceptional, but that's not to say that they can't produce a good sales horse, and more importantly, a good race horse. And that, you mightn't get millions for them, but they should be very commercial still going forward.
You only get the million for the Kamiko.
Yeah, of course. Jesus, Redford wouldn't be happy hearing that. Yeah, exactly. But like, I suppose that's a full brother to a Group 1 winner, so he was entitled to make it. But
yeah. John, what are your thoughts on the first season? So I think it's a positive anyway that maybe some of these stallions are going to get an extra year. Like, I think the best is yet to be seen from Pinatubo and a couple of others. But have you any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's very healthy for the industry. As John says, it is hard to get an exceptional sire like Blue Point, Memas. We've had a couple of them the last few years, and it is healthier it gives they mightn't make mad money, but at least that gives them a chance. Probably does buy them another year, as you say, and it probably gives people a chance to get some value at the full sales. I think there's only 3 winners between the first individual winners between the first 6 in the table at the moment. So it gives a greater spread. You could buy any of those stallions at the yearling sales and without being, without thinking it was a bad idea and without spending crazy money on them either. So I think we kind of do need a greater spread of stallions at the moment anyway, instead of focusing in on a few not as polarized. So no, I think it's a positive thing for the industry, and those stallions will be given another chance hopefully by breeders next season.
Okay. And I think we touched on it at the start, John, just when I was talking about the year as a whole. But how do you reflect on the year as a whole? I mean, it was a very interesting year in that, the market changed in the middle of the yearling sales season. And I think, in particular, I think it caught a lot of breeze-up handlers by surprise. Some of them are on the back foot. They're down on numbers last year. I know that's nothing really to do with you. But, I mean, how was it as a vendor just trying to gauge things just with the way the market changed so drastically at maybe Goffs?
Yeah, like it was a funny year in general. Like I think the Breeze Up lads probably got they got a bit of a raw deal. There just seemed to be, when they were selling their product, there just didn't seem to be a huge demand for a racehorse nearly, and which meant that at the Breeze Up sales, and it's not something I know a huge amount about, but just looking at it from the outside, if you don't clock in the top 10 or 15, you're useless, which couldn't be further from the truth. Plenty of good horses come from the Breeze Up sales that don't clock in the top 10 or 15 or whatever it is. But from a vendor's point of view at those sales, if you want to try and make money, your horse has to clock. And I think a good few of those horses that did clock very well and sold very well haven't really gone on and done it on the track this year. Now, some of them have, but there definitely has been cases where some of the top lots have been disappointing, whereas the other ones have have been very impressive winners. There has been a huge amount of winners come from the breeze up sales, and they weren't top lots. So I think the breeze up men in general maybe got a little bit of a raw deal, and that definitely affected things at the yearling sales. They weren't as strong. But I think the yearling sales as a whole this year, like I said, it was up and down. Definitely Newmarket and the last sale and France there just gone by looked to be very strong. It seemed the thing got going later on. And the earlier sales, I'd say the top end was pretty okay and the lower end wasn't great, but I think, if you look at the sales companies as a whole, I think Fairyhouse did a really, really good job of getting in the Eastern Europeans, the Italians, the foreign lads who prop up the bottom. And in that kind of market, when your bottom is strong, it filters up nearly. Whereas then Tats in England did a great job of getting in the top lads. And in those better markets, when your top is good, it filters down. So, definitely the sales companies, the ones that worked really hard of getting in the particular buyer you needed for each different type of sale, they were well rewarded. And I think they definitely did make a huge difference. So, I think, the market as a whole, it's the same as it always is. The top is strong. The middle, if you have a good individual, you'll be fine. And the lower end is always going to be difficult.
Okay. And Sean, I know you were shopping in nearly every sale this year. I think you bought 16 all told. Granted, a lot of your business was done late at Book 3, but you did shop early and you bought some in Germany as well. But how did you find negotiating the waters throughout the year?
Yeah, I thought the start of the market wasn't as bad as I thought it might be. I thought Doncaster, the Somerville, I thought there were fair prices. If you found a nice horse, the prices were fair. People didn't get overpaid, and obviously if you didn't tick all the boxes, it was pretty tough going. But I thought it was a fair market up to about, say, when you got to the Orby, then it started to warm up a bit. The Orby was good and strong, Orby won, and then once it got into Tats, sure, it went the opposite way to what everyone expected. It really took off and filtered down into the Book 3, and I'm sure it'll filter down into France this week, and then probably into Goff's the open sale. It'd be a different type of horse, but I'm sure there'll be still plenty of people there haven't filled their orders. But I thought overall it was the start was a fair market. And look, if you work the sales hard, there's still value to be had there. But no, I thought it wasn't as bad as we probably expected at the start of the year.
Okay, we can all agree that I think Tattersall's was fairly phenomenal. But how much, as a breeder, John, would you kind of read into that going forward? Would it be very unfair to use the words false dawn, or would it give you confidence to, go and get stuck in with regards to I think the reason why I'm asking this is because we saw a big drop in the foal crop there in the return of mares only a couple of days ago. So, I mean, how much weight do you put in the stability of what happened a fortnight ago into your plans going forward?
Well, I suppose, first and foremost, there's still obviously a huge demand for horses, which is brilliant. So, there has to be, trainers need to buy horses to train. We need to produce them. It is a kind of a supply and demand thing. From a personal point of view, I won't change a whole pile. We try and improve our broodmare band every year. We either retire or we sell a few every year, and we try and buy a few more. I think everyone is different, and it's not for me to be telling people how to run their own business. But I'm always trying to improve my quality. I think the mares that we try and move on every year are the ones that aren't making the cut. They're obviously not producing nice horses, or they haven't produced good enough horses on the track. And if they're not doing that, and you want to be, run the thing as a business and be viable, then you have to move on those mares. And I think every individual breeder has to look at it the same way. And I think this year in particular, and Sean has touched on it, the nice horse will always get sold provided it has some bit of pedigree. Like, I mean, there's no future in breeding from mares that haven't produced a winner, or that their pedigrees are spun out or are no good. Like, if you want to produce good horses and run a business, you have to look at it from those kind of angles, and it's up for every breeder to make up their own mind what they're going to do. But the quality of the mare has to be the most important thing when you're assessing, what stallions you use and stuff like that.
Contentious topic, but stallion prices. Do you think there should be any form of a correction, maybe even the middle tier of the stallion market, or do you think off the back of Tattersalls and the Gough Sorby sale that maybe, stallion masters will think it's fair enough to keep them at the levels that they are?
It's a bit like the last point. The popular stallions are going to be expensive. If you look at the return of mares this year, the ones that covered a huge amount of mares, they cover the mares because they're popular and people want to use them, and they're priced accordingly. Some people might say they're dear, but it is supply and demand. Like, the lesser stallions are easy to get into, and they're cheaper for a reason, because they're not as popular. So, I think, like, it's very hard I can see it from the stallion man's point of view, and it is very hard to criticize what they're charging for the popular horses, because they have to price them in a certain way to try and limit them. And, the lesser stallions aren't as busy, aren't as dear. And on top of that, then the independent places who are buying these stallions, they're giving huge sums of money for them to try and get them. Most of them are going to lose money on the stallion if the stallion doesn't work. Now, if the stallion works, they'll make a huge amount of money on them. But it's very hard if they're giving, 3, 4, 5 million for a stallion. You can't stand them at $8,000. You'll be broke. So, like, they have to stand their stallion at a certain level, given the price they're giving for the stallion. And then the ones that make it, it is kind of supply and demand. Like, you could criticize the stallion men as much as you like, but they're never twisting anyone's arm to send a mare. It is the individual breeder has to look at the quality of their mare and has to say, can I make money? If I spend 20 grand on my nom with this mare, am I going to get a return on my investment? And have I a chance of producing a good racehorse? And if they think they are, they should go for it. And if they think they aren't, they need to drop a level, or they need to try and get a better mare. And, like, that is the kind of, in my opinion anyway, that is the way it is. You can't expect to, make money if you're using the wrong stallion and your mare isn't good enough. And, most people who want to criticize stallion men and what they're, the stallions are too dear, and, like, maybe they need to look at their own mares before they go having a go at everything else. Like, it's a real contentious subject, Brian, and it's very hard to, the biggest issue of all of this, what drives it, is the level of prize money in English racing in particular. If the prize money was equivalent to what it is in Australia or America, I don't think too many people would give out about stallion prices, and but that affects the whole. It's a greater subject basically than what we need to talk about, but it affects everything basically. If we had you wouldn't be so reliant on such a polarized market if you had more prize money, and that would filter down to the breeding side of it too. But look, you are where you are, and I think it's for each individual breeder to assess their own mares and to try and think, can we, with the mare we have and the product we're producing, can we make it work? And it's for them to make up their own minds.
I think it was Tony O'Callaghan actually at Orby Part 2 who put it quite succinctly that nobody wants the fun horse anymore, and I think he's dead right, because just the costs and the reward they don't tally. So I think I'd agree with you on that, and it all goes back to prize money. Sean, have you any thoughts on the stallion? Not that you're going to
No, I absolutely agree with John on that one. I think, like, stallion men, they're running their own business. It's supply and demand. If they can get 150 mares at the fee they set, sure. And if they're getting more for a lesser price, they're going to put up the fees to protect the stallion. So, like, they're not going to set a fee if they don't think they can fill the stallion's book at that fee. So they have to run it. That's how they have to run their business. And you can understand, as I agree 100% with John, the problem is breeders need to look at their mare and is she worth going to that stallion at that price, or even is she even worth breeding from? Like I've seen in some sales, there was one particular lower grade sale I was at, and there was a mare and there was no winner in the first 2 dams, Like there is a lot of mares that still need to be taken out of the system. And I think that's nearly something that we need to address more than the cost of stallions. Because like a lot of mares have been over covered, and say breeders have spent more on the nomination than what the mare justifies. And that's not the stallion man's fault either. So no, I think it's something, the drop in the return of mares this year is needed, and I think a further drop is needed again. So I think it's something that we've been needing for quite a while.
It seems like a silly question to be asking how we look ahead towards the fall sales, given how the yearling sale market changed so quick. But I mean, Sean, what are you expecting going forward?
I think the top end, as we know, like it'll be stronger than ever. Everyone's always trying to, as John says, up the quality. A nice foal will probably still sell well. Pinhookers at the lower end will probably be a bit more cautious because they've, some of them have lost money this year. But I think the top end will be very strong. Could be a bit of value at the bottom end. And I think there's probably value to be had in those first season sires that had 2-year runners this year. Some people will sit on the fence, where other people will be able to see a bit of value there in those sires that had their runners this year that maybe haven't taken off like people expected, but next year as 3-year-olds they could start to motor and turn a nice profit in the autumn next year.
Okay, John, where are we going to find the value? You've the ability to see into the future. I want to know, what are you going to be doing? You don't have to give all your secrets away, but you can tell me.
To be honest, Brian, at every sale you go to, there's a chance of a touch. There's a chance of finding, a foal that will turn into a nice yearling, or a yearling that will turn into a nice breeze up. There's most people who are at it are good at it. We're all on the same horses. It's just trying to use your imagination and try and find one that not everyone else is on, or try and see more value in one than another. I think, from my point of view, I'm not going to change a thing. You look at as many as you can get through, and you just have to put in the legwork, work the sales hard. I'm not going to particularly do anything different this year, but the amount of good pinhookers that are out there, there's a huge amount of them, and it's the ones that stand the test of time are the people who are best at it. And you see them, like I'm at it 20 years now. It's all the same faces you're seeing. It's the same as they're competing against. We all know a good foal. We all know a yearling. It's just some years you get lucky and other years you don't. And like that is kind of, there's no mystery to it or great secret to success or anything like that. You just have to work hard and try and find a bit of value.
Yeah, I think
that's what I'd do.
The two of you come at it very differently. Like, you're a vendor, Sean's a buyer, but I think it's very much a similar approach in that there's no substitute for legwork and getting out and seeing as many horses. I mean, Sean wouldn't be coming home with a Massat and a Bangkok if he didn't look through every single horse in a sale. So, and you probably similar with the foals, but albeit maybe a certain level of fashion needs to be applied.
Yeah, well, you can't go in and buy, the nicest foal you see, buy something completely obscure out of a mare who's 1 from 10. Like, I mean, it's not going to work. So, you have to have certain, I'm not going to say rules, but parameters that you'll follow. And you have to try and narrow your catalogue down some little bit. Like, you are not physically going to be able to look, if you're on your own, at every single foal in Goffs or in Newmarket. You could do 200, 250 a day. You'd wing through them pretty quickly, but you have to set certain standards. But you just, like you said, there's no substitute for legwork. And, when you're going around the sales there, it's the same people you're meeting the whole time. You just have to work hard at it.
The harder the work you get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there is a lot of luck involved in it as well. You can't deny that.
Yeah. Well, look at lads, thanks very much for joining us, and best of luck for the sales for the rest of the year.
Yeah, pleasure, Brian.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thanks for having us.